The young and the restless spoilers. Victor had long nurtured a secret desire, a meticulously calculated plan that would force Kyle and Claire apart. For Victor, the idea of their love was not just unacceptable, it was intolerable. His vision was clear: if he could orchestrate the disintegration of their relationship, he would finally seize the control he craved over every facet of their intertwined lives. To that end, he summoned Audra, a woman of uncanny charm and influence, to his side. Audra, though known for her captivating presence and persuasive aura, was entangled in her own web of commitments. Happily married to Nate, she had carved out a life defined by loyalty and stability, a life free from the shadowy manipulations that permeated Victor's world. Yet Victor's request was not merely a casual favor, it was a test of her character and an invitation to step into a moral gray zone. Victor wanted Audra to seduce Kyle, to gain his trust in such an intense, almost horrifying manner that he would become utterly dependent on her influence. The plan was as audacious as it was sinister, leaving little room for error. Everything, it seemed, was carefully orchestrated, with each move designed to undermine the bond between Kyle and Claire. The tension began to mount as Victor outlined his scheme. In a dimly lit room, where shadows danced on the walls like the secrets that lurked within every whispered word, Victor laid out his plan to Audra. He detailed how she could subtly manipulate Kyle's emotions, drawing him away from Claire by preying on his vulnerabilities. "Imagine it," Victor cooed, his voice smooth yet laced with a chilling intensity. "You lure him in, make him trust you implicitly, and before he realizes it, he will be under my spell. His connection with Claire will crumble, leaving him isolated, easy to control." It was a proposition that bordered on the monstrous, a dirty game of emotional manipulation that sought to tear apart the very fabric of a loving relationship. Yet Audra felt a profound conflict stirring within her. She had long known that stepping into Victor's world would mean sacrificing a part of her own integrity. Though she possessed the power to influence Kyle, indeed, she could make him fall under her spell in ways that were almost terrifyingly effective, her heart belonged to Nate. The thought of causing irreparable damage to Kyle and Claire's love was too heavy a burden to bear. With every fiber of her being, she resisted the temptation to engage in Victor's treacherous game. Audra's inner turmoil was palpable. She was caught between the allure of power and the steadfast desire to preserve the sanctity of genuine love and loyalty. In a moment of clarity and moral courage, Audra decided that she could not become an instrument in Victor's malevolent plan. Recognizing the irreversible consequences that might ensue, she resolved to take a stand. Instead of succumbing to the pressure to manipulate Kyle, she chose to expose Victor's true intentions to both Kyle and Claire. In an emotionally charged confrontation, she revealed the details of Victor's plan, a plot designed to deliberately sabotage their relationship. "Kyle, Claire," she implored, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and regret, "you must understand that everything I was asked to do was to break you apart. Victor, he is a monster, a vile, controlling force who cares nothing for your happiness." The revelation sent shockwaves through both Kyle and Claire. They were stunned not only by the audacity of Victor's scheme but also by the implication that Audra, a woman they had respected and trusted, had been entangled in it all. Anger surged in their hearts as they grappled with the betrayal, an act of manipulation so brazen that it left them reeling. "How dare he play with our lives like this?" Kyle roared, his eyes burning with fury. Claire, equally incensed, felt a mix of sorrow and indignation. For both of them, the notion that their love could be subject to someone else's twisted desires was unacceptable. The gravity of the situation soon evolved into a call for retribution. Kyle, with his fierce protective instinct and unwavering determination, declared that he would teach Victor a lesson that would serve as a warning to anyone who dared to interfere with the bonds of love. "Victor," he vowed, "you may think you can control us, that you can dictate who we love. But you have crossed a line you cannot come back from. It's time you come to your senses and stop harming innocent people." In the ensuing days, a palpable tension filled the air. Victor, who had always prided himself on his ability to control outcomes from the shadows, suddenly found himself facing an uprising he had not anticipated. His plans, which had seemed foolproof on paper, were unraveling in the wake of Audra's moral stand. The revelation of his intentions spread quickly, igniting a firestorm of resistance among those who cherished genuine relationships and detested manipulation. Kyle and Claire, now united in their shared determination, rallied together to confront Victor. Their alliance was more than just a counterstrike, it was a declaration of independence from the toxic influence that had sought to undermine their love. They began to piece together every detail of Victor's scheme, determined to expose every nefarious facet of his plan to the world. Their journey was fraught with challenges, as Victor was a formidable adversary with a long history of devious machinations. However, the strength of their conviction, combined with the undeniable power of their love, proved to be an unstoppable force. As they embarked on this difficult path, Kyle and Claire discovered that their struggle was not solely about defending their relationship, it was about reclaiming their autonomy from a puppet master who believed he had the right to orchestrate the lives of others. Their quest for justice became a rallying cry for many, symbolizing the resistance against any form of emotional exploitation. In their defiance, they found solace and strength, a testament to the enduring power of trust and loyalty. Audra, for her part, became an unexpected heroine in this unfolding drama. Despite the personal risk and the potential fallout from aligning herself against Victor, she chose to stand with those who truly deserved protection. Her decision was not made lightly, it was a culmination of her own inner struggle, a realization that the cost of silence was too high. In revealing Victor's vile intentions, Audra not only liberated herself from a moral quandary but also paved the way for a future where such manipulation could no longer thrive unchecked. The narrative took on an almost mythic quality as it progressed. Victor, once an enigmatic figure of power, was increasingly seen as a cautionary tale, a man whose hubris led him to believe he could control the hearts and minds of others. His actions, driven by a toxic blend of jealousy and ambition, ultimately became his undoing. As Kyle and Claire forged a new path forward, their lives were no longer defined by the shadow of Victor's influence but by the light of their shared hope and determination. In the end, the story of Victor, Audra, Kyle, and Claire is one of choices and consequences. It is a reminder that the manipulation of love for personal gain is a perilous game, one that invariably leads to ruin. While Victor's plot was engineered with cold precision, it was ultimately undone by the unyielding power of truth and integrity. Kyle's promise to teach Victor a lesson was not merely about retribution, it was about restoring balance, ensuring that no one would ever again be forced to endure such a treacherous manipulation. The battle that ensued was emblematic of a larger struggle, a fight for the right to love freely, without interference from those who sought only to control. It underscored the idea that while seductive power can sway minds, it is the steadfastness of genuine emotion that ultimately prevails. Through their collective courage and unwavering commitment to what was right, Kyle and Claire transformed a moment of potential tragedy into a beacon of hope for all who valued honesty and love over deceit and control. Victor's schemes may have once seemed unstoppable, a dark undercurrent in the vast ocean of personal relationships, but his downfall was as inevitable as it was deserved. In the final reckoning, the truth emerged victorious, leaving behind a legacy of caution for anyone tempted to manipulate love for selfish ends. And as Kyle and Claire moved forward into a future defined by their own choices, they carried with them the profound lesson that the bonds of love, when nurtured by trust and honesty, are impervious to even the most insidious of forces. Thus, what began as a covert plot of seduction and betrayal culminated in a powerful narrative of defiance, resilience, and the triumph of the human spirit. It is a story that challenges us to consider the true meaning of loyalty and the lengths we must go to protect the sanctity of our most cherished relationships. And in a world where manipulation lurks in the shadows, it serves as a timeless reminder. No one should ever be allowed to dictate the terms of love, and those who attempt to do so must be held accountable. This tale, stretching over the tumultuous landscape of ambition and emotion, invites readers to ponder the delicate interplay between power and passion, and to question whether anyone truly has the right to meddle in the affairs of the heart. In the dim glow of twilight, when secrets and shadowed intentions danced on the edges of reality, Victor's true designs began to surface with alarming clarity. He had always been a man who cloaked his ambitions beneath a veneer of civility, but tonight, as he leaned forward in a secluded, lavish study, the mask began to slip. With a measured tone that belied the cold calculation beneath, Victor asked Audra a question that would shake the very foundations of their uneasy alliance. Have you ever considered exacting revenge on Kyle? The question, simple yet laden with dangerous implications, hung in the air. Audra's heart pounded in her chest as she weighed the consequences of such a notion. For years, she had suppressed the darker corners of her thoughts, a time when bitterness might have tempted her to retaliate against the man who had once unknowingly inflicted a deep wound upon her. But those days were long past. In recent times, her life had found a measure of solace and contentment alongside Nate Hastings, a man whose steadfast love and gentle humor provided the contrast to Victor's relentless machinations. Audra's mind raced back to a time when the prospect of revenge had flickered at the edge of her consciousness. It was a fleeting thought, a whisper of what could have been in a more turbulent moment of her life. But now, as she listened to Victor's probing words, she sensed that his inquiry was not born of genuine concern for her pain. Instead, it was a calculated maneuver meant to coerce her into a role she had no desire to play. A role as an instrument of Victor's own self-serving agenda. Victor's reputation for selfishness was well known to those who dared to navigate his treacherous world. His charm, though undeniable, was always tainted by an undercurrent of manipulation. Audra had learned, sometimes the hard way, that Victor's proposals were never free of strings. He wanted to use her influence over Kyle to further his own designs, a cruel strategy aimed at dismantling the bond between Kyle and Claire. The very idea of such exploitation set her nerves on edge. Yet, beneath the layers of revulsion and moral indignation, there flickered a hesitant curiosity. What would it be like, even for a moment, to see Kyle, a man who had once held a certain significance in her life, succumb to the agony of betrayal? The notion was tempting in a perverse way, a whisper of forbidden pleasure that quickly clashed with her conscience. However, the more she dwelled on the possibility, the more the consequences loomed large. Revenge was a treacherous path, and Audra knew that any act of retaliation might lead her down a dark road from which there was no return. Her internal debate was suddenly interrupted by Victor's impatient interjection. "Audra, think carefully," he urged, his tone insistent. "If you embrace this path, imagine the power you could wield." The agony in Kyle's eyes, the destruction of his world, it could be intoxicating. But then again, you must wonder, what might become of you? Would the satisfaction of revenge be enough to fill the void, or would you, too, be consumed by the flames you help ignite? Victor's words were both a temptation and a warning. They painted a vivid picture of the potential rewards, an intricate dance of emotional retribution that promised to deliver not only the downfall of Kyle but also a twisted sense of empowerment for Audra. Yet, the specter of loss loomed over the scenario. Audra was painfully aware that, should she step into the role of an avenger, there would be consequences far beyond the immediate fallout of Kyle's suffering. Nate, her loving partner who had anchored her in a life of genuine happiness, would never accept the transformation into a figure of revenge. His steadfast moral compass and the secure, nurturing relationship they had built together stood in stark opposition to any act of cruelty. Deep in thought, Audra considered the delicate balance of her current existence. Her relationship with Nate was a sanctuary, a refuge from the storm of deceit and manipulation that often swirled around Victor's world. In his eyes, she found a reflection of the woman she truly was, untainted by the bitterness of past regrets. The idea of trading that peace for a fleeting taste of retributive satisfaction filled her with an inexplicable dread. She had long since learned that the pursuit of revenge was a double-edged sword, capable of cutting deeply into one's own soul as well as into the lives of those around her. In that charged moment, as Victor's proposition lingered between them, Audra's inner voice grew louder. She recognized that Victor's suggestion was a ploy, an invitation to join him in a sinister alliance designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of those he deemed weak. To entertain the thought of revenge against Kyle would be to give in to a darkness that had no place in her life, a darkness that threatened to dismantle not only her own happiness but also the fragile bonds of trust and love that connected her to Nate. Resolutely, Audra met Victor's gaze. "I have no interest in revenge," she declared, her voice firm and unwavering despite the turbulent emotions swirling within. "I will not be your pawn in a game of cruelty and manipulation. If you seek to tear people apart, then you must do so on your own. I cannot, and will not, sacrifice the life I have built for a momentary thrill of vengeance." For a brief moment, silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Victor's eyes narrowed, the hint of a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he recognized that Audra's refusal was not the defeat he had anticipated. Instead, it was a challenge, a declaration of independence that threatened to upend the delicate balance of power he so carefully maintained. Yet, even as Audra rejected the seductive promise of revenge, the question of negotiation lingered in the air. Could there be a way to reach an arrangement that would satisfy Victor's ambitions without compromising her own integrity? The thought was both tantalizing and repulsive. On one hand, Victor's offer of a mutually beneficial agreement suggested that he might be willing to compromise, to negotiate a path that allowed both of them to pursue their desires without crossing moral boundaries. On the other hand, any negotiation with Victor carried the inherent risk of being drawn back into a vortex of deceit and moral ambiguity. As the evening wore on, the tension between them escalated into a charged conversation about power, loyalty, and the true cost of revenge. Audra found herself torn between the allure of a dangerous, exhilarating proposition and the steadfast commitment to the life she cherished with Nate. Her mind replayed the moments that had defined her recent past, a series of quiet, contented days with Nate, where laughter and gentle conversations replaced the bitter echoes of past betrayals. The stability of that life stood in stark contrast to the volatile tempest that Victor represented. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Audra admitted to herself that part of her had once fantasized about a revenge that might have brought her a perverse satisfaction. But that was a time long gone. A time before she understood that true happiness lay not in the fleeting thrill of retribution, but in the enduring bonds of trust and love. The very idea of hurting Kyle, even as a means to an end, was repugnant to her now. Moreover, she could not ignore the implications of Victor's negotiation. His willingness to strike a deal, one that promised to benefit them both if they could dismantle Kyle's defenses, suggested a man who was as cunning as he was ruthless, a man for whom the collateral damage of broken hearts was merely a byproduct of his ambition. The conversation reached a turning point as Victor, sensing Audra's inner conflict, leaned back and allowed a moment of reflective silence to pass between them. His next words, measured and deliberate, carried a note of genuine curiosity. "Audra, consider this, what if our goals align more than you believe? What if, in breaking Kyle's spirit, you could also reclaim a part of yourself that you thought was lost? Think about the power that could be yours, the freedom from all that has held you back." Yet even as Victor's words dripped with persuasive allure, Audra's resolve only hardened. The memory of Nate's kind smile and the warmth of his embrace anchored her firmly in reality. She knew that any engagement with Victor's dark designs would inevitably lead to a spiral of suffering, not just for Kyle, but for herself as well. The potential for revenge to morph into a self-destructive force was too great a risk. It was a lesson learned from years of navigating the treacherous waters of human ambition and betrayal. In the end, the proposal left Audra with a profound question of her own: could any negotiated deal with Victor truly benefit her, or would it forever tarnish the love and happiness she had fought so hard to secure? With conviction and clarity, she resolved that her future lay not in the bitter realms of retribution, but in the honest, if sometimes painful, pursuit of genuine relationships. She would not allow Victor, nor the specter of revenge, to compromise the sanctity of the life she had with Nate. Victor's final words in that encounter echoed in the silent corridors of the night, a promise of future dealings and a reminder of the perilous dance they had begun. As Audra stepped away from that fateful conversation, her heart was heavy with the knowledge that while Victor's schemes might continue to ripple through the lives of those caught in his web, she had chosen a path defined by integrity and loyalty. And in that choice lay her true strength, the courage to defy the allure of easy vengeance in favor of the lasting rewards of love and personal honor. Thus, in a world where power is often measured in the currency of broken trust and shattered dreams, Audra's decision stood as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even amidst the most seductive offers of retribution, one's true worth is found in the capacity to love honestly and live without compromise. And though Victor's negotiation might yet tempt others to stray from their moral compasses, Audra's steadfast refusal ensured that at least one voice of reason would always